Oh my channel has seen a spike in viewers recently. Like a steady from like 10,000 to a day to, I don't know if it's like, no, not even. It was like a 5,000. It was like 2,500 a day, and now all of a sudden it's back up to like 50,000 a
You
day.
guys got the Tidal Gardens boost.
Well, I don't think so. It was before. It started before that, and then it kept going. But I don't know, maybe. But it's, I'm getting 100,000 views or 50,000 views a day. It's, it's the YouTube Shorts, but
It sounds like so much.
it's like $10 a day. In revenue. 50,000 is $10 a day. I think is what I've been noticing.
Not incredibly amazing, I guess.
No,
as far as revenue
but
goes.
when you consider the effort, the effort, the payoff.
What's up, guys? We're just chit chatting. This stream is highly experimental. And I'm actually very excited about this. Because
I feel like every time I'm on, there's an experiment going.
there's always some degree of experimentation, but this is a big one because this is the first one that I'm broadcasting in 4K. Because we got a new internet connection a couple weeks ago. I tried to do like a 1440p one, so it's a little bit better than HD.
Major echo. Audio.
Major echo. Why would there be a major echo? Let me think.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. I know why. I know.
3 mics going on.
I know why, guys. Is that fixed? Hopefully that's fixed. Okay. No, thanks for pointing that out. Because I almost never have like a camera that has its audio on. But now that we do like the podcast stuff, we need to scratch track for audio. So now our cameras default to having a mic.
For those of us not in the biz, what is a scratch?
Okay, so a scratch track is where you plan to replace the audio anyway. Audio is horrific. Not fixed. Negative. It's still doing it. How about now? I should probably still talk. So hopefully that did it.
Yeah, let's see. Can I bring it up?
There's an echo still. Here, hold on. So just so you know, there's like a 30-second delay. That's why like I can't tell immediately. But okay, good. Now it's fixed. Okay, so I actually did fix it, but then I have to hit another button to push it live. Okay. By the way, you see this little 6-minute countdown? This is why we do this stuff. So we fix the audio stuff before we launch into a 2-hour live stream. Anyway, scratch audio. It's when I want to record audio separately on like a mic, like an audio recorder or a computer or something. And so we set up all the microphones and everything like that, and it's really, really nice. But then you have all these camera angles, and you need to sync up all the audio. And so that's why you need to like have a reference track from the camera with the crappy audio. And so you scratch that eventually in post. By the way, careful like leaning all the way back. Becca has that chair like negative resistance.
Well, there is. I'm maxing it out right there. Maxed out. Is she a rocker? Is she perpetually rocking, or
she like just
always just laid back?
She just like slumps in like back into the chair. Just it's when you're over the age of 40, you start to realize like how reckless younger people are with their bodies. Like
you're like it's terrible for your posture.
And also, I think it's also bottomed out as far as like the height of it goes. So there's like no suspension.
Well, I was sitting in this. and I was way lower than you, and I was like, did he do that on purpose so on camera he looks
No,
like the
no, that
dominating figure?
so her thing has like no suspension at all, and she just like plops right into it. I'm just thinking like back surgery.
Yeah, that's just crushing those spaces between your vertebrae.
I know. So, anyways, guys, thanks for coming and hanging out with us. This is the what is this? The April live stream. We just had a live stream 2 weeks ago, so this is some fast turnaround. But like I said, highly experimental. We've got 4K going. We had crappy audio earlier, and that's fixed hopefully. We have Nathan on. And so if you don't know who this guy is, we've been friends for a really long time now. And over the years, I think just out of like pure convenience of him being local, I've been chronicling his aquarium's progress. And so we started with a 200-gallon-ish aquarium, and now you're on to a 450. Did a long podcast. I know that like dozens of you saw that.
Dozens.
Dozens and dozens
Tens of
of
you.
you. Yeah, like fives of you have probably watched that podcast. The podcasts on my channel do not get views like my regular videos, but that's okay.
Is it a different distribution, do you think? Or because, we've done it before where we've talked about my tank in an audio track and then videos of my tank the whole time. And this setting
Yeah, those
was
did
different.
well. Yeah,
Yeah.
those did well. One of them did well. One of them did really well. Yeah, I don't know what the difference really is because I do specify that this one is a podcast now, and Google does something different now because Google Podcasts like went away, and they rolled all of that into YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and so now there's YouTube podcasts. So when you say something is a podcast, it does its own thing.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah, so it might be that.
And how it shows up in feeds and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and also, like the audience really came to this channel for a certain type of content. And when you're offering something slightly different, some people might be like, that's not really what I'm here for. I don't got, an hour to listen to anything.
Yeah.
And so they don't even click on it. But at the same time, I was thinking, like, maybe I should start my own podcast channel. I started the channel, but then it's like I uploaded the first video and I'm thinking, this is like such a slug process of just uploading these super long podcasts that I'm like, I don't even know if I want to do that. So I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. Okay. It's got 2 minutes before the choral portion of the show starts. If you guys have never joined us on one of these live streams before, long story short, you can go to tidalgardens.com/live and you can purchase corals, assuming that you're in the US and all that stuff. Okay. I'm really glad that you guys jumped all over the audio thing, because that would have really sucked to have done like all this time. And
What would have been worse, the bad audio or the time that we recorded an hour plus of audio and it didn't save?
that was pretty bad too. Yeah, that really sucked. The technical difficulties are such a drag. It's hard enough just to hit record and then for it to like fall apart like that. No fun. Okay. So we have 1 minute to go. Let me say my thank yous real quick to all the peoples. So we have one corporate sponsor currently. It is Polyp Lab. So thank you very much, Phil from Polyp Lab, for supporting the Tidal Gardens YouTube channel. There's an outside chance that we might have more in the future, but we're like crazy selective about who we really approach for that. Like, we want to have used their products for years and years and years, because there are plenty of companies that I'm sure are very nice companies. We simply don't use their product. So that's kind of a categorical no. Obviously, the money is nice, but it's way more important that like I'm super familiar with and like their products. So thank you very much, Polyp Lab. On the page, oh, I've got to start. I've got to start it. Oh, start. Okay. On the Patreon side, thank you to Elaine Martinassi, Aline Barley, Alan Jackson, and Louis Brandycamp, Chuck Admire, Greg Zimmerman, Harkins Aquatics, ICP Test Hub, who I saw in chat, Jordan Marty, Keith Singer, Kyle Jameson, Lisa Clow, Lacry Fine Art, Lynn Holt, Puddle Aquatics, Ryan Baker, Scott Williams, Skylar Korn, Sue Hemmons, Thomas Tarrant, and Tim Garner. And on the YouTube member side, Mark Baumgartner, William Heitz, Carlos Fernandez, Chris Jordan, Steven13, Mike Downey, Keith Holland, Terry Kuhn, Herb777, Justin Harden, and Ohio Adventures. Thank you all so very much.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
About one of the members, the ICP Test Hub. Is that an actual ICP test or just a industry name?
I don't know. So Andrew at ICP Test Hub, real quick, you get a free opportunity in chat to plug who the heck you are, just because Nathan asked. I have not used ICP Test Hub before, assuming that it is a testing company at all. I've used a handful. Like I've used Fauna Marine a couple times. I used who's the one that Unique Corals sells?
Isn't one of them Triton?
Triton, that's them. I've used ICP Analysis, which is the one that they sponsor Reef Builders. And I've used Reef Labs. And I think that currently we're going through the Reef Labs tests. Yeah, so we've used a whole bunch. Hillbilly Reefer, since we haven't seen Nathan in a hot minute, has anyone seen Rico from Rico's Aquariums? I have not. He kind of fell off the face of the earth. I texted him a few times, but I think he is just doing his own thing, and he has not made any YouTube videos that I know of. Geek Domo says, why am I watching this? Every time I watch one of these live shows, I end up buying like $500 in coral. You know, trust me, we could use the $500 in coral.
Well, glad you're tuning in.
Funny you mentioned that. So, earlier this day, I had a visit from a roofer because this roof leaks, guys.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like, so it is a 5-year-old building and the roof is leaking. Fun fact, the roof has been leaking for 2 years already. So 2 of the 5 years, the roof has leaked to varying degrees. One was because a vent for like an exhaust vent for the bathroom or just drainage in general, that was installed improperly and that was fixed. But that was the source of a lot of water. But I've got a metal roof on this building, and there's a few screws here and there that are just not seated properly or improperly installed. And so I'm getting quotes on getting all those screws fixed. So the range of solutions goes from like hundreds of dollars to fix screws and stuff like that. Maybe fix a ridge vent, to 6 figures to redo the entire roof.
Which is why you're doing live sales every 2 weeks now.
Yeah. So anyways, guys. Yeah. Okay, so the reason why I think it's funny is because the original builders for this place, this is something I learned after the building was fully built, is that they specialize in horse barns. And so these building standards are to horse barn standards, not to like high-end coral farm standards.
Horse are a little bit more lenient in environment conditions.
If you know, there's a couple of drops of water that come down, not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. But it would be a real bummer if there's like a drop of, you know, like a steady stream of water coming in, frying your computer, for example. It's not as good. You know, it just occurred to me that this light over here is not on. One sec.
That was a dramatic lighting decision to cast the shadows.
And I'm back. Okay. Great prices. Can't wait to set up my tank. It's in progress. Nice, Gerald. Yeah, a lot of times these live streams, we are selling off stuff that is growing crazy well for us, and we're kind of like thinning out the herd, so to speak. But we do have like some what you see is what you gets that are a little bit later on that are higher end stuff too. Reef return. I also envy the US pricing on anything. I live in Denmark and order from our neighbors in Germany. So pricing is kind of all over the place. For instance, you recently purchased a coral that was not a great value.
No. I think it was multiple hundreds of dollars.
Yeah. It was an insane plate coral, and that is also on my list of things to acquire. I did have an insane plate that I was going to trade for, and that trade basically like fell apart. So I'm like, at some point I'm just going to buy it retail, and retail for them goes between like $700 to $1,000
for not a large piece.
For not a large piece. And on top of that, they grow slowly, and a lot of stuff can happen to a small frag that grows slowly. So it is a big time risk. Geekdom. Horse barn works. Yeah. All things considered, it's been a very, very, very good and robust building. But there's a reason why it came in at half the quoted price of any other builder that we looked at. Just saying. Glad to hear that you're sounding much better too. Sounds like you're over the hump. Yeah, I had a cough. Like, I would say that the past 3 days I've been basically clear, but I've just become addicted to cough drops. So I just keep on eating them, which I've got a dental appointment coming up. They're gonna have something to say about that. They're gonna be like, "What did you do to your face?" Like, oh yeah, sorry about that. I just ate cough drops nonstop for 3-4 weeks.
Lodging addiction.
Yeah. Okay, Brandon is asking, how do fish stores balance salinity with evaporation, taking water from tanks to sell? I would assume they don't use auto top off. We do not use auto top off at all. Everything that we do here is manual. So we have a water delivery system that goes to every sump, and based on like what the salinity is looking like, we kind of manually fill it. Because we sell a lot of corals. We occasionally do maintenance-y type things. So like an auto or auto top off here would be a very, very bad idea. You'd constantly mess with salinity. Like, do you have like salinity issues ever in just the home aquarium?
I do, because of just the possibility is there because of how I do my water changes and with liter meters. But like, I don't use an ATO. I program how much fresh top off water I want a day, and so evaporation levels will vary from day to day, and at times, but it's a very slow change when things are a little off from mine, and I just have to test weekly, and it's within range.
Okay.
So I make micro adjustments.
So it's kind of an ATO though, right? If you're
correct, it's
an automated top
15 off. Yeah, it's 15 liters a day of fresh water, but that doesn't always line up with evaporation rates one way or the other. But on 650 gallons, that's not a big. You don't have big changes very quickly. But I did work at a fish store, pet store, with saltwater, and we just checked. There was no automatic top off. We just checked salinity multiple times a day on the systems and replenished as necessary. So, probably similar to kind of what you do here.
Yeah.
How often do you guys check salinity?
Almost like pretty much any time that we're trying to top back up to the certain
because
line.
you saw the levels down. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what that was kind of, we'd look at the sump of the system and see that the level's down and check salinity and decide how much of what needs to go in there.
This is kind of just like this is like such an obvious tip, but a lot of people don't do this. Get a label maker and put on the water line label on your sump, like that, because it gets very easy for, first of all, for you to like kind of mentally forget exactly what the water line really is, and because you can get, you know, generally in the ballpark, but I mean certain sumps are really, really large. Like our sumps are quite big, 500 gallons. And so a few inches in 500 gallons is a lot of water potentially that you could be off. So just slapping a label on there is really nice. Also, when you're traveling, which you're going to be traveling soon, having that water level communicated to the people looking after your tank is super nice, because you can just be like, hey, you know, make sure that the sump is, you know, full to some degree. It's like, I don't live here. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what full is. I'm going to fill to the top.
Yep. I have 2 marks, the low mark and the high mark, and it's only maybe 2 inches or 3 inches on the sump, but it's about a 15-gallon difference between high and low mark, even though the gap's only that big. So if it hits the low mark, it's going to take 15 gallons to get to the high mark. So as long as the water level for me, for my system, is in between those 2 marks, we're fine.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you're good.
Yeah. For us, it's like there's always going to be like this fluctuation. So I'm not so super worried about like a low mark in any real sense, but I just have like a target mark.
Yeah.
And it's like you just try to hit this before you leave for the end of the day, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. For mine, tall marks where the protein skimmer will overflow if you get to water over that level, and low marks where the return pumps will start to suck air if it gets too low. So
it's been a hot minute since I've had an in-sump protein skimmer. That's actually submerged. That's not true. There's technically a couple of tanks downstairs that have that, but for like a big system, we no longer have those. We have like fully externals.
Yeah.
And those stay nice and consistent as far as water level goes, because otherwise your sump level is going to mess with.
And yours is changing
quite
a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
On a daily basis.
Yeah.
The Kalkwasser line. Yeah.
Your videography is so good, I could tell exactly what it was. Yeah, I've got Becca to thank for that. We have really, really, really nice cameras. And I don't know if any of you guys out there at home are able to see this on like a big screen TV and not just a phone, but this broadcast should be in 4K. So hopefully it looks pretty good.
Both the footage of the corals and us. Are we in 4K?
So technically this is a 4K camera, but the entire frame that's being broadcast is 4K. So we're shrunk way down.
Oh, okay, good. I was gonna say we probably need a hair and makeup if we're
oh no,
are looking at us in 4K.
I'm used to looking good and ugly in 4K. Yeah. I've been doing the 4K no makeup thing for a really long time. Not that flattering. Okay, Armani Custom Jewelry Design. How can you make a purchase on these items on the screen? So the pinned comment right up at the top, There's a link in there that's for tidalgardens.com/live, and you will see all of these corals listed there for purchase. Just treat them like a regular item, put in the shopping cart, check out. There's also an FAQ on that page in case you have any questions about like shipping, or if you accidentally pay for too much shipping and all that fun stuff. But it is all in there.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
What I see a couple people have chimed in on what they're actually watching the live stream on. Out of curiosity, what is everybody watching the live stream on?
Actually, you know what we can try to do? We can try to do can we do a poll? Engage with the audience. Start a poll.
You're gonna have to give them.
Ask a poll question. What device are you watching the show on? Question mark. So
phone, TV.
Okay, so we got phone. We got desktop. We got laptop. We got
tablet,
TV, and no, we only got 4. So laptop/tablet.
There we go.
And go. Start poll.
So, we got a new TV, I don't know, maybe 9 months ago. And I never really thought about watching YouTube on my TV, but about 3 months ago, we switched to YouTube TV for our, cable, replacement of cable. But, like, I went to the YouTube app, and I started watching stuff on my TV, and I was like, this actually makes sense. And I am now joining the new technology. So it was interesting. Just something I never really thought of. I was like, yeah, this makes total sense. I don't know why I never did.
So I'm like super spoiled in I don't even know what to describe it. But I sleep with my laptop sitting on my chest. And so like I don't need a big screen TV, because if you're like 5 inches from a screen, everything looks big.
Yeah. So somebody says they're just listening. I have literally before just put on headphones for a live sale, and I'm just listening as I'm doing aquarium chores and listening to aquarium talk. So
I get that a lot.
It's great
because have it on in the background.
It's something going on, and you're really tuning into listening what you're doing more than, focusing on the fact that you're spending 20 minutes scraping the back of your aquarium, and time flies.
Yeah.
Doing aquarium chores while listening to aquarium talk.
I need to get the actual like buds though, because I have like the full headphones and it gets kind of like steamy.
Yeah, I ended up getting Google's buds, and I never thought I would really like them. I have I think Sony's noise canceling headphones, and they're awesome. And they're like for planes and stuff, that's great. And I used to mow the yard in them, but I'd start sweating on the expensive noise canceling. I was like, oh. So I got the earbuds just thinking, I would also go to lunch at work. I'd go out to lunch, and I'm like, I don't want to have, headphones on in Chipotle and look, more ridiculous than necessary. So I end up getting the earbuds, and I really like them. They are very convenient. And like when the AirPods came out, I was like, those are so dumb. Well, who's ever going to wear those? And then, why would you ever use those? But now the earpods, I'm like, actually, yeah, it's one of those. I'm catching up with current technology.
There you go. I've never even worn the AirPods yet, but people say.
Do you have any?
No, I got the AirPod Pro, which is the full headset ones. Which again, it's a little too steamy. Okay, guys, I'm ending the poll, and let's see what people are doing here. Okay, 44% phone, not unexpected. A lot of desktop, very few TV folks. Very few TV folks, 7%.
3 people.
Yeah.
But
it is amazing how many people do the phone thing for like everything. Because I say that because of how little I'm on my phone.
It's definitely an age thing as well. Yeah,
Yes.
you're on the other side of that age spectrum where, some people, I mean, I understand you can do everything on your phone now. But we just didn't grow up doing everything on our phone. And I'm actually, if I'm at home, I am much more comfortable sitting at my desktop,
Mm-hmm.
and the TV's over here, and that's what I'm doing if I'm using a computer and stuff. But kids and my kids are a lot of times phones.
Yeah, I totally get it. I'm a laptop guy, so I'm like glued to my laptop. But my phone specifically, there's a lot of times where the phone isn't in the same building as I am. A lot. So it's like kind of like looking around. It's like, is my phone even in this room? Because it doesn't need to be.
So, is this a reefing channel or a tech channel?
It's a little of both.
Yeah.
It's a little
Anyways,
of both.
I was actually surprised the Google Buds are like round. They don't come down, stick out of your ear and come down like the AirPods do. But they're surprisingly comfortable, and I can wear them for long periods of time. And I found it actually pretty amazing how comfortable they were.
Yeah. So sometimes I worry that like the certain technologies are like so convenient that they become like a distraction almost. Like that's why I don't wear a smartwatch and stuff like that. People love it to like, to monitor their vitals and all that stuff. But a couple of my friends, they are constantly, just getting notifications and doing
Oh,
this.
yeah,
And I'm like,
mine's not quite as user friendly or capable of showing full messages, but I turn those off because,
absolutely
yeah.
not. Absolutely not. Uh, Does Tidal Gardens, so this is Clyde asking, does Tidal Gardens use any Hydros controllers? Any experience? Okay, couple of things. We've talked to CoralView a number of times about demoing the Hydros controllers. And, they would love nothing more than for us to use their controllers. But I was very upfront with them in saying we are probably the worst use case for controllers. Like we're terrible at them. We don't pay enough attention to them. Uh, there's a lot of problems that are probably user error that are going to be done, and we will never, ever, ever fix it. So, for instance, like you use a lot of auto testers, right?
I have, yes, and I currently am using.
You're using GHL. You've used
Yes,
Aquatronic in the past. There might
yes.
have used something else. Have you ever used like a Neptune?
No, I've not used any of their systems.
Okay.
Their testing systems.
How often would you say that you get an error code of any kind on an automatic testing controller type thing?
You're not going to go more than 2 weeks generally
Okay.
before something pops up.
So it happens frequently. And sometimes it is just one of those things where like they require some degree of attention. The minute that an error code pops up here, that thing's going to get ignored for like 6 months. Like we will never try to fix it. We'll just be like, moving on. Didn't matter anyway.
No, that would happen, and one of the testers would have an error, and if it wouldn't fix by just rebooting it, it might be 3 weeks before I sit down and try and figure it out. And then by that time, that causes other problems,
Right,
like
because
things dry out, like
the dry
pH,
lines.
yeah, dry lines. The pH probe might dry out, or reagents not mixed right, or whatever. And then it's like, yeah,
There's so many points to failure of failure because we've even had like um, we've even had probes show up out of the box just reporting nonsense. Like we had an ORP probe that would like on activation went from 0 to 900 and back to 0. I'm like, well, I won't be trusting that.
yeah. So that's the automated testers, but in terms of controllers,
Okay.
I've been running the original Apex. I think they had something before that, but
Yeah.
or it was something else, Aquabus or something. Anyways, I've been running the Apex, the old school Apex, for a long time, and I don't have problems with the functions I use that for.
I've used what is it, the Apex Juniors or something like that.
Was that way back in the day?
It was way back in the
Like
day.
10, 12 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And only recently have we started to take those down. And we were using them primarily for temperature monitoring. and it was definitely a lifesaver just for us to be able to monitor temperature. But again, certain probes go bad every now and again. But it was really nice to be able to just to quickly glance at your phone and see all this stuff. But if you wanted just some baseline functionality like that, there's some super cheap alternatives. Like
Yeah, I don't know anything about the Hydros controller though.
people seem to like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, people seem to like it. Then they also I think they might be in a week unveiling their auto tester thing, which could be really cool. But going back to my point though, if you just wanted to get like temperature monitoring on your phone, like Wi-Fi, like it's hard to beat a $50 Inkbird. Like it's super convenient and super easy to set up, and yeah, it's like $50. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe this upcoming generation of auto testers will be a little bit more robust. But I'm really not holding my breath. Yeah, it's never worked well for our workflow, I guess. No one's watching on their Samsung refrigerator. That was a kind of a dumb idea to sell refrigerators.
With screens on.
Yeah, I never understood that. Who knows? I might be missing out, guys. I might be missing out. About the Maven, which is that auto tester, looks good. However, proprietary reagents, after going from something like ReefBot, is tough. Um, sure. Yeah, I don't know. I never got creative when it came to reagents. Like I always just used whatever they recommended. I've had some so Reef returned saying I had a hard time to have some reliability in automatic salinity testers. Yeah, because I mean an automatic salinity test like a salinity probe. I'm assuming
Yeah, I don't know.
like those are
They can wander pretty quick, right?
yeah, those are current based. So yeah, you're gonna get so some wackiness like you would with any type of probe like that. Yeah, and again, guys, like as far as like automatic testing goes, there are degrees of automated tests. Like for example, that German company Hach, they make like professional automatic testers for like laboratories and well, public aquariums that have laboratories. But I've never personally used it, but those are kind of like the professional standard. Uh, they're between $5,000 to $10,000. But for like a public aquarium where they need to make sure that their belugas don't die or something, it's probably it's probably worth it. It's better than trying to replace a whale. Um, but for our use, like just doing it manually might be like the best thing because I think that for one of those Hach auto testers, you have to like just hit a button, it does the test, gives you a number. Cool. But for us, it's like we can just like line up 15 things and just do them all at once.
Yeah, yeah. Your staff and employees doing it, right?
Yeah, and you don't have to even do it that frequently. Maybe like 2, 3 times a week for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we get a general baseline. We send out an ICP once every month or so. Not it's not a huge deal. So getting like the 3 readings per day sort of stuff. It's for a home aquarium. It's like oh cool, you get all this data. But for like a coral farm that has 10 different systems, it's less attractive. And once the error codes start coming up, it's really unattractive. The cool thing though is that their tester supposedly does the 3 major um, calcium or skeleton building things, right? Calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, and it does phosphate nitrate. It's like the thing that everybody wants to know,
Yeah.
which is kind of neat. Um, Probe for salinity, cool. Probe for pH, cool. Probe for temperature, cool. And after that, you're in ICP and prey land. Do you do anything with ICP?
Yeah, about every month and a half.
Month and a half. Okay.
Yes, yeah, because I was just curious, and like I dosed the Red Sea ABCD trace element line, which is your dosage amount is based on your calcium consumption by your tank. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I was like, well, let's see if if it's actually working, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up sending out the ICP tests, and just about all those elements that I was using the trace elements for were within range after a couple of years of running this tank, and pretty decent demand I would expect with the amount of corals in there. And then a couple of them were low, and a couple of the parameters not like red line low, but low within range. And so I started to supplement those a little bit, and then would send out the test every month as I was raising those traces. And then once they were within range, then it's about every month and a half or two.
Or you? It sounds like you're kind of chasing numbers a little bit then.
Just a couple of the
Yeah.
trace elements, yes.
I always worry about that.
They were at the very bottom of the range,
Okay.
and so I didn't push them all the way to the top of the range or anything, but I just wanted to get back in the middle a little bit.
This might be a little Game of Thronesy of me, but sometimes I'll send out like 2 or 3 tests of the same tank at the same time, just to see if your lies match up with your other lies.
To the same ICP company?
To the same company. It's like, yeah, it's like here's like 3 tests from 3 different tanks. They're all the same tank. Let's see what your
and what has that revealed.
Every now and again you see a weird one where it's just like, no, it's really different.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what makes me gun shy about trying to like drill down to very specific trace numbers, and that's kind of why I've gone to the just get it off of 0. Doesn't need to hit any specific like ideal saltwater level. It's like no. Off of 0 would be nice, or if we're like dosing like a certain amount of it, knowing that really should be giving us what we need, and it's still 0, it's like, you know what, no, I'm good. I know it's being uptaken by something. I know we've been putting it in, so that's gonna have to be good enough. But to try to like hit very specific numbers with a test that might be pretty good but might also be,
so if I were to get a test and there's a parameter that is just way out of whack compared to the previous tests,
mm-hmm.
I'm probably not making it. Obviously, any of this stuff you shouldn't make a immediate big change,
mm-hmm.
and I'm probably sending out another test before I even take action. You know, if it's way off trend one way or the other, then it's like, okay, well, that's just not right, and
yeah,
you need to confirm that.
Have you ever like made changes based on bad info?
Not that I know of.
I have.
Oh, well.
I definitely have. We were testing chronically low pH in this building, like really, really low. Then those numbers started looking impossibly low, and it was like we just had a bad pH probe the whole time. So yeah, because we were reading like pHs down into the 7s, and no, in fact, that was not the problem. Once we
shouldn't the corals be dissolving by that point?
Yeah, they really should have been.
Yeah.
Once we finally did get everything calibrated, it was like, oh yeah, your pH was like at 8.5 the whole time, and we were dosing like 30 gallons a day of calc when pH was probably just fine. So like the strength of this building is that there is tons of gas exchange. So even though we were like probably towards the upper end of like our pH, we were able to like compensate for a lot of that on the high end.
Yeah.
And we should never have even gotten to the low end.
Yeah.
Even without any kind of supplementation. But yeah, we've totally done that before. It sucks. Let's see. Hello from Germany. Hello, Kai. Why do you have KH of 9 to 10 in the US? What are the advantages? In Germany, we have 7 to 8. So 7 to 8 is typical ocean water. So there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think there is this belief in the States about higher alkalinity levels contributing to faster stony coral growth. That might be purely anecdotal, but I hear that a lot.
I think there has been studies that have shown that in specific types of coral, like Bacillopora. I think that study was on that, or Stylophora, and so people refer to that. I think there's a lot of anecdotal too, and that's the consensus in the United States, or at least from what I know of people, is that you're going to have faster growth with the KH of 9 to 10 than you are from 7 to 8. That being said, I keep mine between 8 and 9. Just seems like a nice little safe zone that gives me some range, higher or lower, and it's not necessarily going to cause a problem. And then, but stability is, in my opinion, stability will get you the best growth.
And I think perhaps that goes to why levels here might be a little bit higher, is that it anticipates that if there's a fluctuation, it'll likely be a fluctuation down. And if there's a fluctuation down, if you're starting off at a DKH of 10 and it drops down to like 7, not the worst, not the end of the world.
Right.
Whether if you start at 7 and you're dropping down into like 4, that's not quite as good.
Right. And I'm pretty sure Celsius and Fahrenheit have something to do with it, but I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Oh.
Quick poll. What's the better temperature measurement system, Celsius or Fahrenheit?
I mean, it's clearly Celsius, right?
No, it's Fahrenheit.
Like so it is funny how there's like literally 3 countries that use the imperial system still, and one of those countries is not Great Britain.
Yeah.
Like the UK does not use their own system anymore. It's like the United States.
Good luck ever getting the United States to change.
It's
that.
Myanmar, which is where I was born, and that place is backwards as all hell. And then it's Liberia, which is backwards as all hell. It's like the holy trinity of can't count.
Shout out to Liberia.
Shout out to Liberia. And whatever military junta currently runs my country. Let's see. I like to manually dose 2-part in the past. Now they dose 3-part with trace. That sounds good. Yeah. That works. Kelvin. Argument for Kelvin.
Isn't Kelvin's the absolute 0 is 0?
Yes. It's offset Celsius. So
yeah.
instead of focusing on boiling water,
what's 72 degrees Fahrenheit in Kelvin?
It would be roughly
like super high, right?
Yeah.
In terms of number,
it'd be like whatever Celsius is
degrees.
Plus like 200,
yeah,
something. Yeah.
300 degrees.
No, but Celsius is kind of like useful for like, day-to-day stuff. It's like 0 is freezing, 100 is boiling water. Cool. So you can kind of get a framework. Fahrenheit, no such thing. And Kelvin, it's like absolute 0 and then color temperatures, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we have a burning star at 6,500 Kelvin. I know exactly what that looks like.
295-ish Kelvin.
There you go. Liberia has the US dollar for currency. Does it?
Do you think you can ship coral to Liberia?
No.
They're not checking on their side, I don't think.
They're probably not. Let's see. What other things are going on? What?
Geopolitically speaking? Or
No, I'm
oh,
good
we're
on
getting
that.
yeah, okay.
I'm good on that.
We-
I was just thinking, just like I've been just doing construction-y type projects. I've been so distracted. Like I was hoping to get Nathan's podcast, like looking over his tank and everything like that, done much sooner. But then I got a cold for a week, and then I got like completely absorbed
The sound absorbing material.
into some sound absorbing material projects, which at some point I will do a building update of this place because it's been so long. And I think a lot of times that like the stuff that goes on here is kind of boring because I see it every day. But it's really new to everybody else. And then when I look back at everything, like years later, it's so nice to be able to go back and just to check on progress to see, no, you've been making strides this whole time. And it's really cool to like go back and listen to like what your thoughts were at the time and even planning in the future what it how it turned out versus what you said your
Hmm.
goals were and all that. And sometimes it's turned out like way better. Sometimes there's certain things that just didn't quite work out. Um, do you do any reef tank stuff on your YouTube channel anymore?
I occasionally will take a quick little video of something and do it. What I do miss, and I use your videos of my tank to go back and see what it used to look like. This current tank, because you've done 4 or 5 videos, I think,
Yeah, at least
and
three.
I was I used to be much more active on the forums where I would post pictures somewhat regularly and um, kind of just every now and then describe what was going on. But that was as much as it was for me to have a journal of my system as it was to share information and exchange ideas. But I don't do that as often anymore, and I miss that. And I used to really encourage people like when I was in the clubs and stuff, but like if there's value to doing that because you can go back and look at your tanks and what's changed, and sometimes you're not going to realize the leaps and bounds and changes. And even now, I look at my tank, and sometimes I'm like, it's just not. It's not fully. It's not filled in yet. But then I see your videos from when my tank first started, or even a year in, and I was like, well, actually, it has grown quite a bit. And
For sure. Thank you for the super chat, Reef Return. Appreciate it. It's the 30 DKKs, which I believe is Denmark. Denmark. Um, no, appreciate it though. Yeah, as far as like chronicling tanks and stuff, my mind plays tricks on me all the time as far as progression goes, because like we have that tank downstairs that we were just looking at with the Colorado sunburst anemones. There was a time when that tank was supposed to be something completely different. It was supposed to be a Goniopora show tank, and we had Goniopora in there, but just we needed a place to put some bubble tip anemones. So we just had a basket. We threw just some in there. We don't like to mix different types of bubble tip anemones into the same system. So we need to, if we wanted a new strain of bubble tip, we need basically a system that doesn't have any bubble tips to throw it into, blah, blah, blah. We threw them into a basket into that tank. Eventually one escapes, not a big deal. Then two escapes, not a big deal. Then they start to split and then more escape. And so suddenly now you have like a handful of bubble tips that are harassing like everything else in there, harassing the Gonioporas. The Gonioporas get kicked out. So for the longest time, I was thinking, well, one day, we'll eventually move these anemones out, and that day kind of never came. And but you didn't have like a critical mass of these bubble tips to really make an interesting display either. It was like six tiny, and I mean, when we first got these bubble tips, they were the size of a quarter. And we did a trade with like a local person, and we were trading like one type of anemone for his anemones. The ones that we gave him were like the size of like a basketball, and he gave us ones that were the size of a quarter, and we're like, the heck. But whatever, we did the deal. Now fast forward, that tank absolutely is a bubble tip show tank now.
Yes, it is.
The largest of them is like the size of a pizza, and there's a bunch of them now. And it is kind of interesting to go back and look at the videos over the years where you can just see that tank in the background, and it goes from this like afterthought to now being a very dramatic display. So it's kind of cool to have that all kind of chronicled. Do you have any pavona in your tank?
Do I? Yes, I have
Yeah.
a couple different varieties. The green branching kind, and then the various other color that encrust. I have actually several.
Okay.
And
So Gerald is asking, is it medium care? How would you say?
I say it's relative. It's amongst the hardier corals, and I think it's
Hardy or not hard?
hardier. Yeah, yeah. I would say it's medium to easy care, in my opinion. Um, as long as you're not blasting it with too much light, it's going to be fine.
I find that the real difficulty with pavona is how mean it can be.
Right. And yes, it's going to grow. It's going to spread. You will be successful with it, but it could get to something else.
Yeah, it's like the success part is like careful what you wish for, which is kind of goes for a lot of corals. Do yours send out sweepers?
Um, I've seen them before, but I don't. I can't really blame it for wrecking anything that I can recall. Now they're not really in crowded areas either, and
Yeah.
that's generally. Are you talking? That's you'd see those more out of the encrusting ones, right? Versus the green branching. I don't think I've seen the sweepers
I've
from the
seen
green
it on I've
branching.
seen them on all of them.
Okay.
Yeah. That is kind of the only big drawback for a lot of corals, I think, is like their aggressiveness.
There's some really cool pavonas out there, various colorations, and some have some high contrast. I
Hmm.
like.
We have some bright orange ones and stuff.
Hmm.
Uh, Fly Angler 33 is asking, is Cyphastria an easy coral? New to the hobby and new tank. You've got Cyphastria also.
Yeah, I think it's relatively easy. You know, if you have if you're saying a new tank, but if the tank's been up and running and is relatively stable, um, I think a Cyphastria is going to survive better than the majority of corals out there. I think it's
They're super fast growing.
yeah,
Like
they
super,
yes.
super
Keep
fast
into
growing.
account. I've had this mistake before where I put a fast growing Cyphastria um, that just took over. It's that bright pink one with like the bluish polyps. The wait, what was that
Is it
called?
vice versa? Is it blue base?
No, pink.
Okay. It's pink
It used to be
base.
called I think Pink Flamingo, but Mystic Sunset. No, not
That's a
Mystic Sunset.
Monty. A Cyphastria
Yeah,
with a pink base. Hmm.
nope. I'm thinking of a Monty.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So
Anyways, it's like
Cyphastria for us, very fast growing, encrusting. It's more like it kind of carpets, I would say. Uh, and they're not particularly aggressive, which is kind of nice. But they cover surfaces very quickly, and they like dimmer tanks. So that is kind of a perk, I guess. Goose 13, why are bubble tips so expensive? Good question. Maybe you can help me to understand. So, one thing after doing this hobby for 30 something years, there's always going to be super hot, super in demand corals, and they are going to be at the upper end of that price point and or that price range. I don't know if bubble tips were ever that cheap.
Colorado sunbursts have been
Never has been cheap.
yes. I mean, we're talking over a decade,
Yeah.
easy that they've been a top dollar.
I think the cheapest of like regular basic rose bubble tips I've ever seen, $50
Yeah,
10 years ago,
yeah.
20 years ago. No. Oh, nearly 30 years ago, they were $400 for like a real basic red bubble tip. Nobody had them back then in like the 90s. And then a whole bunch of people started getting them. and then I think the price range dropped to about 50. And nowadays, 100.
I have no
Ish.
idea
I
actually.
have no
I'm
idea.
usually not looking for them. I just know that some of those varieties with the real vivid colors, of which obviously attract the attention,
Hmm.
are always
At one
top dollar.
time, Nexus burst anemones were super duper expensive, like over $1,000. Um, but it turns out that that particular anemone splits 10 times faster than all the other bubble tips.
Yeah, well, there you go. The part of it is that like the Colorado sunburst type just doesn't propagate as fast.
That could be, yeah. Um, there's, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily the rare in the industry anymore. You can find them here and there. There's certain corals that are absolutely rare. Like nobody right now online will sell you like an insanity
Insane
plate.
plate, yeah.
Yeah, it would be very very tricky to find like a red sparkle goniopora. It would be difficult for you to find an amazeballs. I think they're more available now than they've ever been, but they're still not everywhere.
Yeah, I've been looking for the insane plate for a while, just looking, not really inquiring. And then there was a retailer I know that has had them in the past at the a frag swap, and they did not have one in the tank. But I asked if they had one, and they said they did back at the shop because that was intended for somebody who backed out. So
Hmm.
I was just fortunate to be at the right place, right time, actually ask about it, and have somebody who had backed out, and that's how I got mine.
Yeah, I think the only time I ever saw one in person at a store, it wasn't for sale. But it
Yeah.
was very, very, very like noticeably the best coral in that tank, sort of thing. And there's only one little piece. Any tips on how to remove a settled in bubble tip anemone? So Clyde is asking. Have you ever had to do it? Do you even have any anymore? Bubble tips?
No, I dabbled in those for like 3 months, and I put just a regular kind of like red one in, and it split into three within a month. And then they started walking around. I said nope, and so they were in positions that were fortunately pretty easy to just kind of work off the area that was relatively flat rock.
Hmm.
But I've heard like ice cubes or blasting with flow.
I don't know if blasting with flow is going to do anything. Um, so there's like the grip of a bubble tip really, really, really can vary. It can be either like really easy to remove, or it can basically be like a gargoyle, where it's like glued down practically, like fused. And so what I try to do is very patiently start just to like gently pick away at one little part of the base to try to encourage it to like, hey, friendly suggestion, try to move, little fella, because once it decides that it wants to like move, it loosens its grip, so the whole thing will come off like really really fast. But if you wanted to like to detail scrape a bubble tip that doesn't want to move, that's going to be a pretty bad time. You're probably going to end up hurting that anemone. If it is really in the nooks and crannies, I would suggest buying like a wood carving set, because there's a bunch of different like scoops and different types of blades that are kind of like rounded, and you can like really detail work into that. And when I mean work into that, don't like dig into the anemone and damage its foot. You practically want to dig into the rock,
Mm-hmm.
and really, and if you're gonna like be forceful, you do it to the rock rather than the anemone. But again, once you kind of can coax it to start to try to move, the rest of it comes very very quickly. Reef with me. What species of corals did Tidal Gardens sell last quarter? What's in high demand? I have literally no idea what we sell out of this place. Like none whatsoever. I am completely, and I mean incredibly disconnected with our inventory here.
Do you know how many sound panels he put up? He
I
doesn't
am
have time for
so
coral sales.
so disconnected. Like the staff, does all of the selection and pricing, and they do the shipping. So I don't see a lot of this activity. Worse yet, I can't tell when stuff is gone. Like, we grow coral so fast here that like the levels of coral just kind of fluctuate, but not noticeable to me. So sometimes I'll be like, hey guys, we have like 9 trays of this one type of Monty. We need to fire sale this to get it up and out of here. All right. Why is it still here? They're like, we sold 80 of those last week. So what you're seeing now is like the remnants of trays that we haven't sold yet. But we literally sold like nearly 100 of them just in the past week.
Well, good job, team.
It's like, okay, please continue to fire sale that because it is growing out of the water right now.
Now, even though you're somewhat disconnected from that, is there a coral that when you put on the website, it's going to sell that day?
Oh,
probably,
for sure.
Like Platycakes, Platygyra?
That'll sell immediately.
Like, did the Meltdown Fabia sell pretty quick?
Meltdown less so. Strangely, for a while. I think that was like a pricing thing though. Like we price those high, and they grow slowly. So like we're in no hurry to sell out on Meltdowns. I mean they're my favorite Fabia. They'll always be cool, and they're slow. Goniopora will sell like high-end Goni sell.
And Mazeball or Glitter Bomb
sells immediately.
Yeah.
At any price point that you want to throw up there, which is crazy sauce. But like Goniopora, very hot coral right now. There's certain like plate corals. I never thought that there'd be a day where plate corals would be this hot, but clearly
I love them. I love not just the insane plate, but I have like 4 different varieties at home, and they're just so cool. Like the insane plate's a plate, right? Yeah. So those other ones that are the puffier, longer tentacle ones.
They used to be Diaceras. They might be Cycloceras now.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like I don't know what they're referred to.
I think in the trade, they're still called Diaceras.
Right.
It's whatever. It's a plate coral. There's so many fungids. Like I've got this coral book, which is probably out of date by now. The number of different types of like these fungid plate corals, it's extreme. So like even on our website, we just have like a category for like fungia, but that's kind of just like a general trade name. It's not so much like a scientific thing. It covers a large swath of things. Do you remember a coral that I think we both had it at one time? It was called a lithophyllon.
Yeah, it was we would consider it
a chalice. It was a lithophyllon chalice for the longest.
Yes, it was like a combination of a chalice and what? They had a longer tentacle, right?
Kinda.
It had a tentacle where a lot of chalices don't.
Right.
Yes.
Those are fungids. It's a plate.
Interesting.
But chalices are one of those other things in the industry where like, we'll just dump all these heaps of random large polyp stonies that are flat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've talked about, in between us about the affliction that sometimes hits a specific strain of chalice, or the fade, where they get the faded spots. And I've talked to lots of people across the hobby, and no one really knows what causes it or any treatment for it other than just try and get it out as soon as you can. But, it's a very specific type of chalice that gets it. Now, they have different colorations, but the chalices, they have slightly different sized eyes or growth patterns. Like, it's clear different species, but everyone calls them chalices. But they don't get the fade like this specific, like the rainbow, like the jelly bean chalice or dynamite chalice. Those, to me, are the kind that get the fade.
I never heard of it before you started to talk about it, and I was like, oh, it's not something I dealt with, so I don't really care. And it was something that like you had talked to cherry corals a lot.
Yeah, and Jason Fox, and it's like the like the My Miami chalice or the Crazy Fox or the jelly bean. That all, to me, they all look like they're the same species, just different colorations, obviously, and they all get it.
So interestingly, we got it on a couple of things here at one time or another. Like we got it on cloudberries.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, which I don't consider that grouping.
Right, exactly, because you're thinking more of like the small polyp,
yeah,
like echinopora type stuff, right? Yeah. Cloudberries, very different. We're getting it now on Favia, like and so they're not really Favia, right? I made an entire video about how they're not Favia. They might be like Dipsastria, like smaller polyp stuff, so like yellow submarine, baby's breath, that sort of stuff. Occasionally we'll get the fade. Occasionally Favites will get the fade.
Have you ever seen them recover from it?
Never.
If a frag gets it,
absolutely never has anything ever recovered from the fade.
Yep.
And we weren't just trying to sit back and wait and see. We did that at first. That doesn't work. We've tried all different manner of dips, and we also tried to do a lot of observation, almost at microscopic levels. Like we were looking for anything that you really can't see with your naked eye, like if there might be some kind of like weird little tiny micro bug, or oh, what is that stuff called? Ciliates. A lot of stuff can suddenly look like it's struggling, and whenever we see that, it's like, I bet that there's something microscopic going on. Because we actually have like specialized dipping containers now where we can shoot through the side of it, and so it's not just a tub. And occasionally you do see like certain little things that like Polyp Lab Reef Primer will kill. And yeah, because
but with the fade,
there's nothing.
Yeah,
there's no signs of anything.
I've had the outbreak when I haven't added any coral in a long time, like months to a year, and everything's grown nice and big, and then all of a sudden I start to see it, and I was like, oh. Can you cut it off? I don't think I've had long-term success with it. I've cut it off, and then the main colony, the healthy part remains,
then gets it again,
and then it's not too long before it gets it. And
I've lost rainbow dynamite chalices that were like this big.
Yeah, me too.
And guys, a rainbow dynamite chalice this big is like thousands of dollars potentially.
Yeah,
like you can cut those things into like 1-inch pieces, and they sell for a lot of money. And so to lose a piece this big to like a mysterious ailment that doesn't seem to have a treatment sucks.
Yep.
Yeah, but no, we have to euthanize these corals now. Like we even tried like putting them all into like a hospital tub and then doing like different types of treatments to that tub for long term, and it's like nothing worked for us. So unfortunately, somebody needs to figure that out for me.
Yeah, it's obviously it affects big dollar corals, and it's just out of the blue. It's whatever, the experiences with people I've talked to, it's just out of the blue, and you just don't know when or why.
It really sucks because it's like we want to be of that mindset where like, no, don't throw anything away. We want to try to save everything we can. Sometimes like that difficult decision just has to be made. Like, no, when you run into certain problems,
it's better for everything else.
Yeah.
For the greater good.
The greater good. Yeah, it's almost like you have like a xenomorph problem. You need to nuke the planet now. Did you ever play like Warhammer 40K? Would you understand any 40K references?
Probably not. Only in video game form, if that's what you're asking. But even then.
So basically, like xenomorphs are like tyrannids.
Oh, I thought the xenomorph was from the movie Alien.
It is.
Oh, okay.
So, but in 40K, there's like there's this race called the Tyranids, and it's like we have a Tyranid problem. We need to nuke the planet. That's kind of like a known solution. Like we can't. No. None of that.
Nothing's getting off there.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and so I know that certain farms, and certain retailers, are like, if we see Montipore eating nudibranchs, that Monty's got to go. Like, we've tried for years through the treatment path, it doesn't work out. If we see it, it's got to be terminated.
Someone was Goose was asking it. Could it be from missing trace elements? I don't know, but there's a lot of people I've talked to have had it who are pretty up on their water chemistry. I mean, that's a guess, but no one can identify.
Because you would think that that once you corrected this, because trace is easy to fix. You add trace.
Yeah.
Um, it does not seem to be related
Yeah.
to like malnutrition.
Yeah, everyone's had it. Obviously, it's hit enough people who have had experience in the hobby that everyone tries something and tries to identify what's caused it, and no one has identified what caused it.
Because for us it will spread from like dissimilar things. So going from like a chalice to a favia, it's like that's not a trace problem. Like you've got what could be some weird.
It seems contagious.
Yeah, it's like a contagion. Dan plays 40K. I actually don't. I know a little bit about it.
Have you heard of Helldivers 2?
I have.
Yeah, well, I enjoy it. My son gets a little frustrated with it because you're going to die and you're going to get run over by bots and giant insects, but it is a lot of fun. So I've been making him play the past few days, and one of his other friends was playing. So before I came here, we got a quick game in. I was like, guys, we got to get to the objective. I got to go. I'm going to miss the live stream.
What? Okay, so sorry about like the little tangent here, okay? What's the difference in any of these first-person shooters?
Well, it's a third-person shooter, and it's just the setting and the somewhat simplicity, but then it is difficult too, and it's just fun. Friendly fire is always on, so you have the hijinks of wiping out your friends on accident or on purpose at times. And half of it is just laughing at the absurdity of how you just were destroyed or body was torn apart. But it is also fun, and it's just well made, and it works. And I'm playing with I usually play with my son, and maybe then they'll two other people join your squad, and it's just let's go create some havoc and chaos. And it's challenging, but they have different difficulty settings, so I don't know. It's just fun. So, and it's all the rage.
Yeah, because I guess I did.
Have you ever seen I mean, do you know? Have you ever seen the movie Starship Troopers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
I've heard that parallel.
Yes, it's very. They do a good job with that kind of stuff too.
Where it's like this nationalistic.
Oh yeah,
such and such.
Yes, you're spreading managed democracy. Yeah, super managed democracy. But speaking of alien, look at that Gonapora.
I wish I was still a gamer, but in certain like small pockets, I wish I was still a gamer. But I realize that like gaming is like a lifestyle, and that is a lifestyle that has passed me by.
Competitive, like if you're playing competitive shooters or something like that, it's just you gotta play or
nope.
No, like I have to peel now. I have to peel him away from Fortnite to play games that Dad wants to play. And sometimes he's willing, sometimes he's not.
People still play Fortnite?
Yeah, they do a great job of reinventing or incorporating things like Marvel, and I don't know if they've done the Star Wars, but right now they're doing Avatar, the last Airbender type stuff. I don't play it, but I watch them, and it's kind of cool stuff. So.
Yeah. That's kind of neat. Let's see. In the next few weeks, I'm going to be talking to some folks about fish. Like, we, just as a coral farm of any decent size, we need fish. And fish do dumb stuff like find ways to like kill themselves. And so every now and again we need to replace said fish. It is such a bummer to bring in fish because like we typically try to like order it from a wholesaler, and um I don't know what it is, but like there's like this idea that some fish are just doomed, like just coming from the source, and it's super frustrating to have to deal with. I would almost say that like on the retail end it's better, just because the retailer has at least had that fish for like a couple of days, and that could help out a lot. So anyway, um, I'm going to be having some conversations about how to best bring in fish and how to like quarantine them and to get them eating and stuff like that. One of them is Elliot from Marine Collectors. He's going to like join me for a podcast. And then the other is Patrick from Reef Wholesale. So he's like probably the biggest fish importer, or yeah, importer slash um, wholesaler in all of Canada. And so it'll be interesting to like hear from a guy that does like boutique um, quarantining of fish versus like a giant yeah wholesaler, because their systems are kind of similar in certain ways, like how ridiculously clean like their systems are. I mean, I typically don't expect a big wholesaler to be like crazy clean, but if there was a fish wholesaler that was kind of like Tidal Gardens, it's Patrick at Reef Wholesale. Like he does like really high end systems and stuff. Um, Elliot from Marine Collectors, like he showed me some video of his tanks. They looked like they were set up minutes ago. That's how clean they were.
Which is just the way you like the sterile
Well,
looking environment, which makes sense.
He was saying that like when it comes to bringing in fish, that cleanliness is like the ultimate tool. It's giving the fish the absolute best chance for survival and success to have these like insanely clean tanks. And he was talking to me about like how often they do water changes. So I forget exactly how big he said his systems were. I have a feeling that we're way bigger. Like it's almost to the whole we might have more water in our plumbing sort of situation. Okay, it's like he might have like a pretty decent sized system, but we're like really big. He does almost triple the water changes that we do on a much smaller system.
For fish.
For fish.
For not corals, right?
For
so
fish.
There's
only
no
fish.
uptake demand in elements. It's just to keep.
He does. So these systems get 100% water changes twice a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of get anything that might have come in.
It's like hard flushing, and yeah, and those tanks, they looked like pristine is the wrong word. They looked like they were just set up, and he manages it to that degree because he's like these like clean systems like directly impacts healthy fish. And I'm like, interesting. So yeah, I want to like have all these conversations because we're a coral farm. We're not set up to bring in fish, and it is obvious that we're not, because it sucks. And it's like such a bummer to bring in fish and to have them not make it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to have that conversation.
But you want to bring in fish for your systems for benefits, right?
Yeah, we need to do
more
that.
Fish for to work in the systems.
Yeah, they're basically, well, they're not employees, but they do an employee's task, I suppose. Oops. G Zin, took your advice, Than. I started my frag tank and loaded with tons of corals and frags, and everything is going healthy and growing well. No cycle needed, in fact. When you started your tank, so I know how you started your latest tank. When you started your 200-gallon tank, Do you remember like going through like some 3 month like
No, because that was the same kind of instance where I had my 93 cube still set up, so I was
Okay.
taking some water and stuff out of there, and it wasn't immediate. It was still a few weeks, but way back when I set the 93 up was the last time I set up a saltwater aquarium from scratch, and I did one. Bought the live rock and brought it home wrapped in newspaper
Mm-hmm.
and put it in the tank and
Fired it up. That's good.
and get things running, and then just let it cycle, which took a couple months. Yes, you had
Okay, so you did have a cycle.
yeah, the live rock comes out of the ocean, gets
Mm-hmm.
transported eventually to the retailer, then it comes home. There's die off and
Okay.
stuff on there, and then it's just it's the nasty cycle for 3-4 months, where at first it's just kind of cloudy water, then that clears up, then you get all sorts of crazy weird looking algae growing on the rocks, and then that kind of clears up, and then
So I was late to this party, because like I would start up tanks kind of that way.
yes, and that was 14 years ago. So.
Yeah. I started our latest system up very recently, and we recently meaning like we left it empty with just like live with this not even live rock, just like rock, and we put in like the bacteria and stuff like that for like 6-7 months or something like that before we put in any coral. Apparently, what I should have done was
Just load it up
yeah, day one, like as many coral as you could fit in there, load it up.
without fish though, or just
Doesn't
load it
matter.
up with fish too.
At that point, it doesn't matter.
That's the new way to do it.
Well, I guess it's not even the new way. I guess it's like it's been the old way. I just never got the memo.
They don't feel that there's a cycle needed or
Well,
going to happen, or is all the bacteria already on the livestock and trays and all that good stuff?
Specifically the coral.
Yeah.
Like it, you know how
Yeah,
when people think of like stocking levels, they think of fish.
right.
They're like, how many fish can this system handle?
Mm-hmm.
And like when you bring in a fish, there is like the cycle aspect to it. You need the filtration enough for the fish and all that stuff, right? And so some people have that impression about coral, where like I don't want to overstock my tank too quickly with coral. Coral is basically filtration.
Right. It sucks up the nutrients more than it produces.
Correct. Coral directly absorb ammonia. Like they don't, you know how people like to have a little bit of nitrate and stuff? Coral don't necessarily consume nitrate. They consume ammonia, so you never even have it turn into nitrate. Like so the idea that like, oh, I don't want to add 50 corals to my tank all at once because I don't want to like, like have a nutrient spike. It's completely the opposite.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, so had I known,
So you just had a few thousand gallons of water flowing for no reason.
for 7 months doing nothing. I could have been like actively farming the entire time, and we had all these issues with like nuisance, like algae and like cyano and all this stuff, right? Literally, all of that was
because there's
fixed.
no coral in there to
Yeah.
soak up that nutrients
Yeah.
and
So
compete with the algae.
what we did was like we just started throwing in like stuff in there, and over time it got better because of coral.
That's funny.
Yeah. So Jake Adams knew that, and he was asked like, "Why don't you just like fill it with coral?" I'm like, "Funny you mention that because like the week before, my friend Laura in the UK was like, we just cycle it with coral."
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not fish
Yeah,
taking in food and creating waste. Yeah.
you just throw in tons of coral and you're good. So yeah, he was just saying that like so G was saying yeah, it's throwing a ton of corals. No, like cycling didn't need to happen. It just activated. Geek Domo, hey fan, I'm a photographer and was hoping you guys would do an in-depth video on your techniques shooting video and or photos. Not even the sliders or all that, but just techniques. Okay, so excuse me. We've done a couple of videos on that topic. You can kind of like go check that back out. However, one of the next podcasts that we're going to publish is a sit down with me and Becca where we talk about just photo stuff for about an hour. So hopefully you get something out of that when we publish it. Yeah, Geek Dome, same thing. Bought $500 in coral, put them all in the new tank, and they're doing amazing. Seriously, no real cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been
30 years, didn't know this.
Yeah, I haven't been in a position to do that.
Essentially, your most recent tank is what
I kind of transferred over a lot
of everything.
Yeah, and
all at once.
I didn't have a major cycle issue, and I was doing water changes out of 200 and dumping that water into the new tank, and then in the frag tank I started taking some corals out of my old system and put them in there, and I was like, this is just fine, and then moved rocks. But I had a lot of established coral and bacteria in my old system that was being dumped into the new system. So
I really think though that it was all about the coral, because like the quantity of coral that you moved over when it really mattered.
Well, what I'm finding now is over the past year is how much more I can feed, and nutrients aren't going through the roof because the coral, there's just so much coral mass, biomass sucking up the nutrients. So, same with, Cato and the refugium soaking up nutrients. Well, this biomass of coral is making use of the nutrients and fish waste and all that stuff. So at times I'm feeding like triple what I've fed in the past, and it's hardly making the numbers move. So
yeah, and
because it's a coral,
and it does make sense when you consider that, like, what is the coral really doing? It's like when you're circumventing all these like nitrogen issues by eliminating the very first stages of it, because it's like that is what it's actually after, was like that toxic ammonia. And that's also why like people seem to have better success once they put some degree of fish load in there. Fish produce ammonia.
Yeah, straight from the source.
And they like to hang out right in coral and sleep right there and just produce ammonia, and those corals just suck it all up.
Yeah.
Obviously you don't want to overload your tank with fish, but I don't think it's possible to overload your tank with coral unless they are killing them, each other. So really, really interesting. G says, I remember asking Than for advice on how to start a frag tank on the last live show. Took your advice, went to work with it right away the day after. Doing great. Fantastic. R.I.P. Jake, such a good man. Yeah, that's a big that is a big regret that I have, that we weren't that we didn't have the chance to talk about a lot of the stuff lately, because we've known each other for a really long time, and the fact of the matter is we didn't like each other for a lot of it. Like everybody kind of has like their Jake Adams thing. We ended off as friends for sure. Tons of respect back and forth. For a long time we did not like each other. But since his passing, I've become like friends with his family and everything like that. At some point, I would like a Windsor and like his little son Reef to come and visit, and so we're planning that. But like Reef right now is a very, very, very small human that is difficult to travel with. So that might have to wait just a little bit. Let's see. By the way, if you don't mind, I recently bought a colony of utter chaos zoas, but after a few days in the display tank, I realized that they have this ugly long stem to them. They open fine, look great, but
it continues hate the long stem.
They hate the long stem. How do I fix that? I don't know exactly why zoas do that, but it could be lack of light or lack of flow or both. That tends to be where I see that the most.
They're extending towards the light.
Yeah, it's usually lack of light and lack of flow. If a coral is okay, this is a good question. Okay, so Jaws Reef, if coral is removing the ammonia, could that have a negative impact on nitrifying bacteria that you want for a fish cycle? I don't even think it's possible to screw it up. Like, I think that if you wanted to, like, so bacteria are so good at what they do and are so adaptable. Uh, I think that if you even if you wanted to circumvent the ammonia part of the nitrogen cycle, you couldn't do it if you tried. Like, um, there was a time when one of my staff wanted to quarantine to such a degree that we would eliminate like all algae and even like bacteria. And I'm like, absolutely impossible. But you know what? Anything you need to try that, I no matter what, this is going to be highly entertaining to me. So whatever you want to do, whatever you need, let's do it. Because it's flippin' impossible.
The bacteria will persist.
It's in the air. It's like there's no way to even prevent it from colonizing. Like there's no way. It's like, okay, I'm gonna start my tank with literally nothing. I'm going to run a UV sterilizer the whole time. I'm not gonna like put bleach in the water, but like I'm gonna do all these things to make it difficult. And then I'll throw in anything at all, and you will have like that
introducing
bacteria.
That'll go crazy.
Yeah.
Well, it won't go. It'll rise and fall to the level that is available.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be just fine. Don't worry. Don't worry. So let's see. In the podcast, we had talked a little bit about like future plans, right? And you are kind of landlocked again on what like the marital constraints are as far as what you're able to do with the new tank or anything like that. You're kind of locked on just square footage, really. If those weren't constraints, would you get a bigger tank? Because you're currently working with a 450 plus another few hundred gallons.
Yeah, I probably would. I would
You
probably
would.
if I had space for it, and because I don't know that it's going to be all that much more work once it's set up.
Interesting.
And other than keeping the glass clean, it's just more glass to clean. But everything else, it's not going to be too much more work, actually, in my opinion.
What is the biggest tank you've seen in person? From like a home hobbyist tank, what's the biggest tank you've seen in person?
Well, mine or yours. Okay. Yours downstairs are bigger than mine, but
okay. So the biggest tanks I have are 600 gallons.
Yeah, those are the most. Those are the biggest I've seen in person.
Okay.
But I'm not going to go to a tank where I would have to dive into to clean, because then that is a lot more work. It's like, so no.
But, it's like if I need to dive into it to clean it, it ain't getting
maybe
clean.
In retirement that would be a consideration, but it's not something I would do at this point in time. So no, it's still I don't see how I would ever have that tank that big, even if I won the lottery and funds were endless.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that like the cost no object.
Yeah,
because. No. So having visited like Andrew Sandler's tank and having seen like big public aquarium reef displays and stuff like that.
Yeah, his tank's going to be a lot more work, obviously.
Right,
and expensive.
Tomorrow, if you could just like own that tank for free, would you have a like?
Is there a trust fund set up to pay for its ongoing?
Cost no object.
I mean, do I have to work on it? Do I have to do the work?
I mean, at that point, you just want to watch a YouTube channel instead.
Like, well, since it's in person, I can dive into it if I want to, but I don't have to.
It's because a lot of people did ask me, like, did that inspire me to get like a ginormous aquarium?
Again, in the real world sense, there's a number of reasons, and the amount of work and upkeep is not something I would be willing to do at this point in time.
it got like regressive for me. Like it wasn't a, oh, maybe one day I want to have like 1,000 gallon aquarium. It went from seeing his tank to me hating the fact that I owned a 600 gallon show tank. Like, no,
Well,
it's like,
you're.
yeah.
I mean, it's an incredible system and setup, but you don't have to do that on a 1,000 gallon tank. You don't have to have the systems running that he did on his or does on his.
For me, it was almost like, because it was an eye-opening experience to me how little I actually wanted show tanks. Because the weirdest paradox of this place is we have show tanks at all, and we're not open to the public. So the idea was I would use it to generate content for the YouTube channel. How many show tank videos have you guys seen on my YouTube channel?
I haven't seen one of those for a while.
For years, probably, right? And the reality is, of all the systems here, they get neglect isn't even the right word. They're invisible. Nobody pays any attention to the show tanks here.
You should have been, you should have subsidized my tank and just not even set up yours.
So
I could have gone a bigger. I just don't have the footprint.
So Brandy, for example, so she comes and visits. She's like, I just want to take over one of your show tanks, and that'll just be my tank to tinker with. And I'm like, if you were like local or an employee, 100% we would do that, because nobody cares about this show tank.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, if I was around the corner, I would definitely take over one of your tanks.
Mom's taken off. But it's like that. Like it is like this really weird paradox. You would think that, like, oh yeah, because we have at least 5 really nice sized show tanks, invisible, completely invisible, and we have like ones of local shopping appointments. Like it's like literally like at most one a day, and not even on most days. So yeah, hilarious.
Eventually they'll be, you're gonna have colonies that are, you can frag some of those now, but
yeah, no, like my dad was actually fragging some Euphilia today. And speaking of like Euphilia, Fimbriophilia, we had like a head of branching like gold hammer, and I will showcase this on an upcoming video because it is really cool. It was about like this size, maybe like the size of like a small watermelon, and it had toppled off of the aquascape and broken. So at that point, we took like perhaps the largest remaining piece, put that back onto the rock. The parts that had broken off, we then fragged into individual heads, and it filled a 3 foot by 3 foot square in one of our systems. And like the amount of production that actually happens in our show tanks, it's actually kind of nice. But it is funny like how little, like, again, neglect is the wrong word. It's just we just let it do its own thing.
Feed it, and that's it.
Yeah, feed the fish. So he's saying that my buddies Utter Chaos are in 250 par and still reaching out. 250 par is high. It's not insane, but it's high. Utter Chaos.
Do they? I don't know. Do they come from like shallow tidal pools, and they're just always right there at
the times that the only time that I've ever seen zoas in the wild, they were basically living right around Acropora.
Right at the surface, near the surface.
Right at the surface. Yeah. Like where you would see an acro colony, you could probably also see like a zoa colony under a foot of water.
Utter Chaos. I'm not sure I've ever seen them.
Because they're bigger, fatter pods.
Oh, I know what they are. I mean, I don't know. I've ever seen them reaching.
You know what? I haven't either.
Yeah, I've seen other types of zoas, but not Utter Chaos.
So So this is just like my mental checklist of like random stuff to do if you wanted to be proactive. Do a water change, dip the coral in something really gentle like reef primer or any kind of like calcium, potassium chloride ish dip of your choice. It just so happens that Polyp Lab is a sponsor of Tyler Gardens. Because like those two things, it's like very low impact, very gentle, and it does a whole bunch for you. So assuming that there's like nothing actually wrong, at that point, again, it comes back to like flow and lighting for me. Usually though, it is a lighting issue. Like they're extending,
Yeah.
and when you like hit these things with a ton of light, they shrink down flat. And again, I've never seen that particular variety extend. So that's why I'm wondering, like maybe you should dip it. Maybe something
Yeah,
is
take
going
a
on.
close look at.
Because especially if they're like looking ugly, I don't know what that really means.
I think he's saying the stem looks ugly. He hasn't looked
Okay.
at it, but yeah, if they're are they opening up fully?
Yeah, because then I wonder, is like, do you have a nudibranch that's eating it or something going on? Who knows?
Very, very healthy.
Yeah, the stalks are like 3 to 4 inches. I've never seen a 3 to 4 inch Zoa stalk. I don't think. I mean, 4 inches is like this. That's a lot.
Yeah. Hey, there's a meltdown.
Yeah. Still got it. My first coral was an Aussie Gold Torch. I still have it today. Congrats. Those are kind of tricky sometimes. Interesting.
Yeah, brown jelly disease is
Yeah.
something I see on those from time to time. That's usually what takes it out if I lose one.
Yeah, it is weird how torches seem to be so susceptible to brown jelly. Um, we got around that fairly recently here. Antibiotics work. Um, but there's like some Euphilia eating flatworms that are like really, really, really bad.
Mm.
Like they're like kind of like almost like thumb sized.
Oh,
They're from Indonesia usually.
pretty good size ones.
They're nearly impossible to kill.
Mm.
That's what's even worse about them. They're like they sometimes will hide in the mouth of Euphilia. They'll avoid dips that way. Yeah, they're awful. That's also one of those things where like consider like euthanizing all your Euphilia.
If they show up.
Yeah, it might be you can't have these anymore. Sort of thing. I got a frog spawn. This is Giannis. I got a frog spawn for the first time, and their tentacles seem somewhat translucent. Is that normal? What could I do if not? Want to field this one?
Well, if it's if you're looking real close, they are a little bit translucent. But if it's pale and becoming more pale as you go along, then it's not happy. It's bleaching in some regard. I've seen that when if it's too much light, but also I've seen on frog spawn like that before. Euphilia bugs or whatever you want to call them. They look like tiny little white fleas. And dipping that a couple times, it'll take a couple dips, but that tends to clear that up, and they bounce back from that. You gotta look real close because they're small, tiny little white grains of salt, if not smaller.
And dipping does actually help that?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, depending on what you're dipping it
in. Would you ever consider interceptor?
Yeah, I think that would be effective, yes.
Okay. Because like I've noticed that certain of the tiny bugs seem to be dip resistant.
Well, it depends on.
It really depends.
I use stuff you don't like.
Oh, the Bayer.
Yeah.
Bayer's pretty tough stuff.
Yeah.
We've done Bayer before too. I try to not use it whenever possible because it is so funky, but I do know that a lot of different types of dips, like the little ostracods and stuff like that, they
resist it.
They resist it. Interceptor kills that stuff super dead though,
Yes.
which is nice.
Yes, I've used Interceptor. I've not used it as a dip before, just a
Not a dip,
whole
whole
tank.
tank treatment.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. The only problem is like it kills shrimp.
Yes. Yeah.
It'll kill all your amphipods too, but I don't care about those. Arguably, hot take here. Those are bad.
They can become a nuisance.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. What else? Really, I think it's about light though. Like a lot of times when I see
Frog
like,
spawn.
yeah,
Translucent. Yeah.
I think it's just too much light. Let's see. I currently reside in Malaysia, and one of our sources are directly from Indonesia. We don't have very much in the way of aquaculture corals. Market is rough.
Just always have to be looking for pests, right?
Yeah, so pretty much anything that's coming from the wild, you have to assume that that's got something going on. There's a lot of opportunity for that, unfortunately.
But in the wild, there's also predation of those pests,
Exactly.
which keep them in check. But once they get into a closed system that don't have, have the predators, those things go wild and take down the corals.
So funny you mentioned that. I was in Georgia, right? Georgia Aquarium, first time ever seeing that. Have you ever been?
No.
It's really nice.
Well, I've heard.
It's really nice. So it's kind of cool because there's like this like single main rotunda, I guess you'd call it, maybe like a single hub, and the spokes are the different exhibits, and you always come back to the main area. It's almost like a video game.
Chicago's the sheds.
Kind of maybe like that.
A portion of it is like that.
Chicago has wings.
The spokes, yeah.
So similar thing in Georgia, right? So they've got like all these different things. They've got some really cool displays. One thing that I noticed is they have Aptasia, because you're gonna get Aptasia if you have salt water. It's a thing, right? The tanks that don't have Aptasia have butterflies.
Yes, right.
Simple as that.
I want to steal one of your butterflies for my frag tank.
we can work something out, I'm sure. But yeah, long story short, there it really is a it's you have the predators or you don't, and in the tanks where you don't have the predators, you're gonna have these things. You're gonna have especially Aptasia.
I think part of my experience is I always want wrasses and I always want a copper band butterfly in my display tank, and I've had that for years, and I'm guessing that has helped in different circumstances.
I also joke that like if I see a copper band in a tank, I automatically assume that tank has had Aptasia. Like that's a telltale sign. Like, why else would you have gotten a copper band? They're not cheap. They're not easy. They're not pretty. Anything. They're really cool, but I know why he's here.
Yeah,
because you had Aptasia. Yeah, and you still have Aptasia. Because if that fish dies,
never getting rid of Aptasia.
Yeah, it's like if that fish dies, we'll see how not Aptasia you have.
Yep.
Oh, we do rounds of Bergia farming, and it's I call it like a wildfire. Like it grows so fast. We try to sell off as much as we can, and whatever's left, we let it go rampant in our systems, and it's like this flash fire that just burns through, and then it eats all the Aptasia. It's like the Fremen, just like they just go out, they do their thing.
But they don't eat all the Aptasia, right?
They don't. Eventually, they starve.
The population dies out, but then the Aptasia reappears.
It reappears.
And the same thing with the copper band or any other Aptasia eating organism.
Yeah.
It does not eradicate it.
Oh, this is a good segue into refugiums. And this is why I don't like refugiums, is because these problems maybe less so with Bergias, but
they could be harbors that stuff.
Yeah, and to some degree it's like, well, we just said there's not a great way to stop it anyway. But for instance, our overflow boxes, like because most of our tanks have copper bands in it, But the overflow box right across the border, right, has Aptasia.
And somewhere in the pipes that Aptasia, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's living in there.
And every now and again we'll scrape the overflow box. All that goes into the sump, gets collected into filter socks. Great, but there's miles of pipe in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume that something can persist in there, like long term.
Yeah.
Sure, but even then, like Bergia nudibranchs, they are happy to clear up stuff in the pipes too. And eventually, it's like nothing is like there's no perfect answer, but these things can be managed, which is kind of my point.
Yeah.
It's like if you have the predators, you're gonna be fine. Speaking of Aptasia, just super glue them in QT when they come out. Easy fix. You're new. You're new to this. So, and this isn't like disparaging you at all. Okay, I promise I am not. If I had to bet, like sports bet is like on every single broadcast of every like sporting event here.
Yeah.
If I could bet on Aptasia versus hobbyist, I'd be a multi-trillionaire overnight.
Aptasia's gonna win.
Aptasia's gonna win like 99.999999999% of the time.
If you just have frag racks and frags, then
Aptasia 100% of the time.
Yes, but it's more manageable. But when you have
management as
rock
like
a reef, yeah, well, it's harder to manage Aptasia in that regard with super gluing them or whatever and just covering them up. It's harder to manage them in a display tank. Like I want a mixed reef display tank, which I have, and I need predation in there to take out.
I think in a completely sterile system, blah blah blah.
Well, they're going to show up, but then you can pull everything out.
Yeah,
they're coming back, but you can can decimate their population at that point in time.
You can try.
And I've actually went through a cycle of Bergia in my frag tank, and they sure reduced the numbers, but then they died out and they came back.
Yes. I just ordered a nudibranch for this is David Garcia Jr. Oh wait, have you had a problem with copper bands and clams? I have a problem with clams, period. Sorry, I'll get to you, David, in a sec. Have you ever had a problem with copper bands and clams? I have a problem with clams, period. I can't imagine how a copper band would make that any better. We also feed our copper bands clams from the grocery store.
Kind of conditioning
so,
them.
Yeah. David, I just ordered nudibranch for my tank because the Aptasia is aggravating coral. Worse than ever. I'm assuming you got a Bergia nudibranch?
I would think so.
To eat Aptasia.
I hope so.
So usually you need to order like a bunch of them, and for the first period of time, it seems like nothing happens.
Yeah, it takes a long time for them to breed to effectively.
To breed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And grow up to that, a month, a few months.
So going back to my hatred of amphipods eat Bergia and eat their eggs. So when people are trying to actively farm Bergia and stuff, they'll interceptor the tank first to kill off all these crustaceans.
Nothing's easy.
Nothing's easy, guys. So this is also why like I kind of like chuckle when people say, "Oh, just quarantine." That sounds like somebody who's never quarantined before. This isn't nothing about just quarantine is easy.
Put the energy and work into quarantining and thinking your system is perfect, and then something gets through anyways.
Oh, I've got a shocker for you. Quarantine systems a lot of time just kill corals. Because everything that about systems that helps to keep coral alive, you kind of are depriving in a quarantine setup by its very design. So like if you want to quarantine acros long term, like for months, you will likely kill a lot of acros.
Are we trying to get people to not even try?
Oh, no, you should just but I'm just like clapping back at the people that are just like, oh, all you need to do is quarantine, and then it solves all your problems. Like, I can tell you've never done this.
Be prepared.
Yeah, it's not easy. Geek Dome, I got 7 Bergia and they all disappeared, but I see some eggs pop up.
They're somewhere.
And like I said, a lot of your issue with that might be uh, amphipods eating Bergias and the eggs. Aptasia can show up from a year-old dry rock. Ask me how I know.
I would not be surprised.
Yeah, they are very good at what they
Yep.
do. And by the way, guys, the very fact that you're on this stream means that you're in like the top 1% of the hobby. I went to Petco recently to pick up like something for a freshwater tank, and I'm like, oh, I understand why people want to ban the entire industry.
Mm.
Like, I get it now, guys. This is not how everybody else lives, like at all. The very fact that you're even like talking about Bergie and Nudibranchs, talking about quarantine, and not even like I'm sure most of you guys in chat have never actually set up quarantine, and that's okay. But you guys have thought about the idea of quarantine, which I would say that 99% of everybody in the hobby has never even considered that as a thing. Like that like those neurons have never connected in their brain once, let alone, actually quarantining. So, that's why I guess like when I'm betting on Aptasia, it's the surest bet ever. Come on, guys. Okay, David did get 5. They're coming in Tuesday. Nice. Giannis, I'm not sure about how much you know about macroalgae. This much. Do you have any advice on how to prune red gracilaria in this display? Um, yeah, I'm not the dude to ask about this.
They do. Yeah, I don't know. They have planted tank type of scissors and stuff.
Yeah, so my issue isn't with you cutting red gracilaria. That can be done with any of these like stainless steel, like aquascaping freshwater tools, right? My issue is how do you keep macroalgae clean in the display at all? Because your list of helpful herbivores is like vanishingly small, and a lot of times what tends to happen with me is that you just get like hair algae growing on your decorative macroalgae with no herbivores that wouldn't also eat your macroalgae. So, do you know who Tigaboy on Instagram is? He's kind of famous for doing a lot of like display tanks with algae. And I asked him exactly like how do you avoid the issue of problematic algae getting in and amongst your decorative stuff, like even like red turf
Yes.
macroalgae, stuff like that, getting all in your decorative red flame algae, right? And he said that he has to prune his tanks back up to 90% and then regrow it because of problematic algae. Like that is how you do it. You become the herbivore. When you see problematic stuff, you have to basically treat it like it was the fade,
Just cut it all down.
cut it all out. It's all got to go.
Mm.
Down to he will cut everything down to nubs and regrow it. I'm like, oh, note to self. I am not having an algae aquarium, a decorative macroalgae aquarium. I thought about it. That's not for me. Oh, another question. What's the debate on acclimate or no acclimate for corals? Some just float, dip, and place in tank right away. Some float and dip and acclimate.
I don't acclimate.
20 minutes tops.
Yeah.
20 minutes tops. I was very fortunate. Which peppermint shrimp wiped out Aptasia in my tank completely. Nice, they do. Some do. Your mileage may vary when it comes to peppermints, and sometimes people will have corals that peppermints will harass.
There's you got to make sure to get the right peppermints too, because there's about 5 or 6 corals in the industry that they call peppermints and
Shrimp, you mean?
yeah, what did I say? Coral.
Corals.
Yeah. Peppermint coral. No, peppermint shrimp. Like there's a specific species or two that eat Aptasia.
There's a handful, and then there's some that are absolutely corallivores that are all kind of like lumped in as like these little red and white shrimp. not to scare you off, but the I guess like the ones that are most common are from the Atlantic, and it's like Lysomata wundermani. I think that's the one you want. There's a publication that talks about the effectiveness of peppermints, and they use an Australian species. I forget exactly which one those are. They look exactly like the Caribbean ones, and most of the time people go for the Caribbean ones. Just saying. Tigaboy is great for algae tanks. He did a very good job. I've seen some of his tanks before. So me being a non-freshwater person at all, and I recently, for the first time in 20-something years, set up a freshwater tank and know nothing. That's why I went to Petco, right? Or PetSmart. I didn't realize what kind of effort people have to make for planted aquariums. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like, why would you do this? Why would you ever do this to yourself? So some people like this serious aquascape guys, they're pruning their tanks daily. Like daily.
Yeah.
And then there's this other thing that they do where they'll set up a tank for literally a week and break it down.
It's pretty funny. So, saltwater guys calling somebody else crazy for what they are attempting to do.
What is wrong with these freshwater people? Never freshwater. I shouldn't say that because like one day maybe I'll do freshwater, but I don't know. Traumatic brain injuries can happen.
There were some freshwater fish that I saw recently, and I was like, I do kind of miss some of the freshwater fish, but that's not going up in my house anytime soon. Okay.
What was funny was I got like algae in my freshwater tank and I had no idea what to do about it. It's like the most basic like
is there a fox face equivalent?
I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah. What's the freshwater equivalent of a fox face?
So I got these snails, and then there's like so a couple of them are just like flipped over, and I'm like, is that normal? Like I know nothing. So that was actually a good experience because I've been doing like the saltwater thing for like 30, almost 40 years, right? And like it is so refreshing to be such a noob in something aquarium related. It's like that's what this feels like, man. Because it's one thing to read a little thing that says this snail will eat algae. Cool. You put the snail in your tank. I'm like, are you good, bro? Are you gonna flip back over? Are you dead? Like, do I need to flip you over? Are you like an astrea that instantly will die once they flip over like this? Anyway, I've seen peppermint shrimp picking and annoying the heck out of acans. Yep, they will do that. A lot of stuff will pick on acans / micromusa lords. For example, what do you call it? Copper bands will do that. Certain fox faces will do that. By the way, we're into overtime. So, last couple of comments, and we have to hit the road. Speaking of acclimating corals, Nathan brought me some corals. I have to give them a quick dip and get them into quarantine.
Yeah, I forgot about those.
Yeah, I forgot about them corals downstairs. And then we're going to grab some dinner in a bit. So real quick, y'all. I have a peppermint that sits on a rock smoking cigarettes and flipping off Aptasia nearby while wearing sunglasses. Been there. We also have like a copper band that is living in harmony with Aptasia that are bigger than it. What water parameters does Tidal Gardens run with? Is it posted on your website? It's not posted. We just go like real ultra basic, shoot for natural seawater levels. Nothing fancy. That is, all of our systems might be slightly different, but that's kind of the set point that we go off of. Nothing exotic. I just took down a freshwater tank, gave it to my local university, helped them set it up. Won't miss it at all. There you go. Let's see. No other snails or hermits in stock right now. They might have just sold out. We're actually kind of low. We need to be placing an order this coming week for snails. All right, guys. That does it for April. So I believe our next live show will be on May 25th. So I will see you all next time. Thanks again for joining. All the orders that are placed, Ben will probably reach out to you sometime Sunday to set up delivery times. Monday, Tuesday is usually when we send out just about everything, but if you need a specific date, let us know. All right, guys. See you later.
I waved with my off-camera hand.